So I've heard you talk about this before, and I want to touch on it a little bit. You talked about hosting trainings for internal stakeholders and involving sales when creating your marketing strategy. So let's talk a little bit about what your thoughts are there, because I think it's something that's unique and different, and most marketing experts like yourself don't have that mind frame. In fact, they see themselves as a standalone entity that's basically functioning as a demand tool. So tell me more about steps you could take, steps our listeners could take to involve their sales team in the marketing strategy, and then tell us more about why it's important to involve stakeholders in the trainings.
Yeah, well, trainings are really important. And the reason why I always involve sales is because at the end of the day, who's the one using the information you're collecting as a marketer? Sales. Sales is the one that's trying to have customers or trying to cross-sell, upsell opportunities. They're the ones that are really doing the bulk of the working of the prospect side of the business. So the reason I get sales involved is I don't know what they do in a given day, and they don't know what I do in a given day.
Right.
So we need to be on the same page. We need to understand what are your pain points, how is marketing attributing to those, and how is marketing helping those. So I always I try to get like one champion from the sales side. So whether that's, ideally it'd be nice to be like a director of sales or head of sales, but somebody who's a champion on the sales side to really work with the marketing team and bring everybody else on board. So that's usually my first thing is I define somebody. I'm like, who can help me communicate to their team?
Yeah.
They're going to trust me a little bit more if it's coming from one of their own peers. So I get sales involved, and then what I do is I say, hey, marketing is thinking about doing X, Y, and Z strategy. What input do you have of how you think this would work? What pain points do you have of what strategy we might create? And what do you think we should do to accomplish those or to help accomplish your goals? So I think listening to them and hearing what they do day to day and how we're helping or hurting their process is key. So that's usually what I start with. And then we draft our strategy, we present it back. Whether we're talking about a lead life cycle, a lead scoring model, what have you, we present it back and we say, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah.
If somebody fills out a form, goes to an event and opens 3 emails, do you think they're qualified, or do you usually call them and, it's somebody that's not even engaged yet? So I really think getting them involved helps us to understand the customers or potential customers, because I'm not talking to them directly.
Sure.
Sales is. So that's really why it's key for me. And also, if you have alignment with them, you guys are just going to start to trust each other.
It's true. And trust has to be there if we're going to be successful as a team. Yeah. That I promise.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit more about building trust between marketing and sales. What do you think when you see things, and I know you've seen it, when you see an email that's got a link that's been clicked on it, but there's no checkbox next to it being opened? How is it possible that from a salesperson's perspective, we see that and we go to our marketing people and we say, how can an email not ever get opened, but the link that I sent there can get clicked on? And sometimes we hear, well, no, they definitely clicked on the link. Well, maybe, right? We don't know. So why does stuff like that happen? For a salesperson, that's a huge red flag that says, I can't trust marketing. And then when marketing has a good win, and they say, well, this person has a lead score of 15. They've engaged with every email, watched every video, and downloaded our white paper. You should definitely be reaching out to them. Then the salesperson comes back and they go, that's not good data. I can't trust that person to do the right thing. They're not my decision maker. They don't have the budget. They're not qualified. There's loads of reasons why it doesn't work out. I think these are the reasons why trust issues exist between marketing and sales. What are some ways we can combat these, and how do you explain these phenomenons that take place in our cycles?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. I mean, there's always going to be these phenomenons. How do you say that word?
Phenomenon.
I need hooked on phonics right now. I'm not even going to use that word. You always need these different milestones that happen. So there's always going to be, when something's automated and it's purely relying on data and tracking website visits and IPs and cookie people and blah, 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 there's always going to be some things that are little nuances.
Sure.
So I always try to explain that in general. I can't give everything an answer. But the other thing is, if sales comes to you with a problem, don't just assume you're right. The first example you said is marketing's like, well, no, they clicked the link. That's what it says.
Yeah.
Okay, well, actually, was it a sophisticated spam server that clicked the link to verify it, and that's why the email never got opened because spam stopped it? I mean, there's different reasons why these things can happen. So instead of just saying, no, it's right, I always look up research. So I'm like, okay, I'm not 100% sure why this happened. Let me look up some trends that have happened before.
Yeah.
So I think being very honest and transparent with sales is important. And then I also just explain to them that you can't always measure engagement sometimes from always marketing or online activities. You know, there might be somebody who's not even in our database, but goes to an event where it's a VIP dinner and that's the first time we get their name and they become a customer because they talk to somebody. You know, there's other ways that people can become customers.
So I do think there's lots of ways people become customers, but I think that those ways are all designed to accumulate or collect the data. So tell me some ways, some favorite ways that Chelsea Kiko collects data.
Well, I go to their Facebook and,
And
I get their social.
I hit Command Option I, and I open up the dev console.
And that's what I do.
And then I look at their website and I look for their munchkin and check stuff out.
Yep, and I just stalk them.
Keywords, right?
Yeah. Guys, I'm not a stalker, I promise. Well, sometimes. I don't stalk you, though.
Professional stalker.
Yeah, right? So my favorite way to collect data is explicit consent type of data.
Okay.
So meaning I am raising my hand to give you my data because the more times that happens, the more accurate that data is going to be.
I like that.
One. And two, the more accurate that prospect's probably going to be.
The more engaged that prospect will be because they took some action, right?
Yep.
So let's talk about forms, because I think forms are one of the most interesting parts of Marketo. We use Marketo internally to manage our forms. We send out all kinds of forms for people to fill out. And when they fill them out, they come back in and we enrich the data and begin an outreach process. Do you find that forms are often where marketers fall short, or do you find that forms are the dominant way that people create content and put a gate in front of it and say, if to consume this content, you must consent to giving me your data? As you mentioned earlier, the hand-raising part of it. What do you think people feel about that kind of content today, now that it's been done to death for years and people start to see these things come to them en masse? How do you feel about the click, delete, innate feelings that we get when we see automated emails that are clearly automated? Fill this form out for more information. How do you feel about those?
I think they can only work if you do them the right way.
Okay.
I mean, of course, forms are great. You're getting the information you want. You're getting people to raise their hand. You're delivering them content, and that's a gateway to a program somewhere. However, I think that forms can be overused in a sense of, does that piece of content really need to be gated?
Yeah.
If I can find this piece of content somewhere else on your website, why are you gating it? I also think that forms, when they look more like I'm taking a test, are probably not the ideal forms to have. So that's why I'm a huge fan